Hi everyone, before we go into the podcast, I just wanted to say thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I'm super grateful for your continued loyalty and support. If you could do me a quick favour, if you could give me a review on Apple Podcasts, it really helps the algorithm and it will help this podcast go up the lists. If there are any subjects or topics that you want me to cover, then please do reach out to me on DM on LinkedIn and I will do my best to find the best guest for that subject or topic. This is the Absolute Business Mindset podcast, created and hosted by Mark Hayward. This podcast will interview entrepreneurs, business owners, and people in their careers. We will delve into their journey to success, key life milestones, and go deep into their area of expertise. Get ready to learn from others' successes and failures. Today we have Louise Bedford and Chris Tate, who are the founders of Trading Game. Hello, Chris. Hello, Louise. How are you?
Great to see you, Mark.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for because you're based in Oz, so thank you so much for finding time in your busy schedule to get on this podcast. So thank you both. Just to give for clarification, because we've got two guests on, we're going to do a sort of alternate questions, one to one, one to the other. So, but there is some joint questions as well. So sort of jump in whenever you want to. First thing is, so the Trading Game has been going for 22 years, which is impressive.
A bit longer, actually. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell me how it formed? How did you start your business?
Well, Chris likes to think that I stalked him.
Sounds good to me.
Both of us have been traders for such a long time. I started in the 90s and Chris, I think it was early 80s, was it for you?
Very long time ago.
Yeah. So we pretty much, when you're a trader, there's not that much to do. So you put your positions on and you wait and you put another position on and you get out of another one. So out of a sheer boredom, I would say, our friendship was formed. And then we started looking for things that we could do together from a business point of view. And that's when we started tradinggame.com.au way back when. I think it was, the late 90s. Yeah.
98, 97, 90.
And what is the unique offering that Trading Game gives that other trading platforms don't give?
Well, what we're looking to do is to teach our traders to trade every trading instrument over every time frame, but where people have their own trading plan. And because we run a mentor program, it'll be our 22nd year of running that this coming year, we are a repeat for free course. So our community is so important to us, and to see the changes in people's lives and to see their worlds open up as they trade and as we can support them further. It's just been fantastic, Mark.
And something, when I was doing my research on you both, so you were described, Chris, as on your research that you gave me, as a sergeant major type style trader, and Louise, you was described as nurturing and empathetic. Do you think that's why? Maybe Chris, you go in here. What do you think that's why your business has been so successful for 22 years?
I think there's two things that business owners, when they go into business with someone else, miss or that they get wrong. And the first is they try and bring the same personality to bear on the same client base. Now, the problem you have with that is that if that personality only appeals to 50% of the client base, you automatically alienate the other 50%. Because they've got no one that they resonate with. Mm. And because Louise and I have distinctly different personalities, we don't have that problem. But it also solves another problem that people who go into business together have, and that is the overlap of responsibility. We made a decision very, very early on that if we were a Venn diagram, we would have the smallest amount of overlap possible. Because we'd seen other people whose businesses, both partners had an enormous amount of overlap in what they did, and that generated it always generated an enormous amount of tension between them. And so we sought to simply diffuse that before it occurred. And it's simply one of our strategies in that and this is something Louise brought to the table, we do pre-mortems. Before any new project, before any new idea, we sit down and we go through, if we look forward to a year in the future and it's all gone horribly wrong, what might have made it go wrong? And so it's a form of stress testing beforehand. Right. And we did that with everything. And that's made the journey a lot easier. Being different makes the journey a lot easier. You're also not looking at yourself, which is a really, really good thing.
I love that idea of pre-mortem because I've gone into a couple of businesses with business partners in the last sort of year plus. And the way that I solved that problem, the problem of overlap or responsibilities was I took about 4 to 6 to 8 weeks getting to know the person, having regular Zoom calls, understanding their values, what makes them tick, what excites them, what makes them want to do this project. And it's actually quite a slow process of actually getting to know each other rather than just jumping straight in and hoping that everything works. Was that something that you did, or was there a lot more affinity you realised that you could work together quickly?
How long had we known each other before we went into business?
Oh, years.
Several years.
Yeah, we've known each other for over half my life. Yeah, so I know exactly what you're saying though, Mark, because I think one thing that you touched on there, which is so important, is shared values. You know, Chris and I may approach business differently, even how to handle specific situations differently, but our shared values are very, very high. You know, one of the things that really impressed me about Chris is when I first met him, he was the CEO of a large trading firm. He walked away from an $8 million in his pocket deal because of a moral issue. The person who he was dealing with at that stage had made a moral misfire, shall we say. Who knows what the real deal was there, but he certainly wasn't doing the right thing. And Chris decided to walk away, and it caught my eye. I thought, wow, if this man is willing to walk away from $8 million on a moral principle, that is who I want to be with and who I want to be like. And I think that's really important. Whoever you're dealing with in business, it's so essential that you share, if it's not a shared goal, that the other supports you at least, and that you have a similar way of seeing the world. Otherwise, you'll just have nothing in common to be able to have as that common ground.
Exactly. I think that's so important. I think getting to know someone and understanding their processes as well as their values is just super critical. Chris, why don't you tell us about your mentoring program? Because I think that's been a huge success, and just tell me like the actual sort of design of it and who you help.
Yeah, the process thereof. We're rather fortunate in that the approach we take is the notion of community, which is why you can do the program again over and over and over again for free. It's simply to build that community. The program itself runs effectively for a year, split into 2 parts, not a beginner section, a foundation section, and advanced. And we've been fortunate in that we attract people from all around the world. We were fortunate enough before COVID ripped the rug out from under everybody to be in London and catch up with several of our people there. We've had people in Asia, the US, and they come from all sorts of backgrounds. Some have a professional background in trading. Some have gone on to form their own hedge funds, their own broking firms. Some simply want to trade their own account or family office. And so it's very, very much a structured program where we try and drag everybody along together. And it's, again, this notion of fostering community. I don't like the word tribe, which is the current sort of buzz vernacular word. I much prefer the word community. And we've had people now who've been with us now since the very first program, who we catch up with on a regular basis. So it is that community-based thing. It's not we say you do. It's we've thought about this and have found this. What do you think? Because everybody brings a unique skill to everything they do. Yep. They don't arrive at the program as completely innocent adults. They have backgrounds in business, finance, academia, whatever, and they've all got something to offer.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Hi, I'm Alex, the host of X Health Show, Meet the Future of Healthcare. Think X-Men, that's X Health, actual superheroes behind programming living cells to cure cancer once and for all. Tech that detects preterm delivery in seconds, brain-computer interface, or apps that employ AI to match you, your disease, with the best treatment. X Health Show brings to you visionaries who push the boundaries of healthcare from Switzerland, the heart of Europe, and the most innovative country in the world. Let me introduce you to their startups. Head to X Health Show, Meet the Future of Healthcare. Happy to greet you there.
I think that's so true. Right, Louise, the discussion about men versus women in trading. So I thought I'd ask Louise first. Chris, you can chip in a minute. What do you think that the roles and responsibilities of that the difference between men and women as traders? Is there any skills that make, let's just say, women better at being a trader than perhaps men?
Oh, look, it is such a loaded area, especially these days, isn't it? I think that there are some innate skills that women undervalue in themselves. When they bring that to the table in either a business sense or in a trading sense, they can actually excel. And one of the studies that has been done in our database, we surveyed 2,000 of our traders, and we actually replicated the results of Brad Barber and Terence O'Dean. And not only are our women outperforming the men in terms of results, but they're also facing some unique issues. Their need for talking, we've got a lot of words to say, haven't we? That is something that can be difficult. Basically, trading is quite an insular, introverted technique, and we do need to be able to tell somebody about our successes and to be able to confide in somebody about our failures. So that can create some difficulties when it's the female trader in the house and the long-suffering spouse has to hear everything that went on. So that's probably number one, with oversharing, shall we say. But also, women in the survey that we ran and in the research, they're lacking confidence in their own decisions. Now, the byproduct of this is a positive one. We don't suffer from under-preparation. We over-prepare. We think it through. We are conservative so that we don't take inadequate risks. We assess every situation that we can and think of the worst possible situation within that scenario, and that has actually put our traders who are female in very good stead. Men, on the other hand, with all that testosterone, I love that, with the action that leads to, but that can lead to overtrading, and it can also lead to taking inadequate risks. That's something that often with our male traders, they tend to go head to head with Chris Tate. They think they know it all. They almost like those goats with the big horns, they try and, let's punt it out with Chris. Chris has been in the markets for so long. He's been a broker. He's been a trader on the floor. Between the two of us, we've got 9 best-selling books on the share market. It's kind of hard to beat Chris down on a share market area, but these men still seem to try. So it's not the most confident of traders that make the most money. It's usually the ones that are the most persistent and that are willing to go that extra distance with their own education and with their focus, Mark.
That's interesting. And I think you're right. Men are often sort of start from an they will antagonize the coach or mentor. I've seen it before myself in property mentoring and stuff like that. People butt heads because it's not working for them and they don't understand why it's not working. So that's.
Do you find that in your business coaching as well, Mark? Have you noticed differences between males and females with the way they go about business?
Absolutely. Women are that I've worked with, I agree with you, are a lot more thorough in their research and what they understand their market to be and who their ideal client is, and they've thought all around that. Men just want to do it. Right, let's just start this business. Let's just get on. Let me start my sales and marketing. And I have to rein them back, especially at the start, to actually think about who are you going to target in your sales and your marketing. Like, it's very easy just to throw out an ad or throw out a speak word of mouth, whatever it is. But it's often quite hard to get them to think about so I've got an exercise where I work through the demographics of their ideal client, and I do this on my podcast course as well as my coaching, and we end up getting to their ideal client being someone they know. Often it's someone that they and for me as well, my when I was doing this for myself a while ago, I was thinking about, and I got to that right person that I could then communicate with. So I think men are very much action orientated and they don't want to think about their values necessarily. They don't want to think about who their ideal client is. They just want to get their product and service up and running and sell it. Where women are a lot more considered and thoughtful on how they want to approach it. So I would agree with what you said there. Chris, coming to you. So you have a background in immunology. So do you think that your scientific approach has helped you as a trader?
I think it's one of those things where you can look back at your background and you can, in hindsight, the timeline looks perfect, because we look back and we construct this narrative and we think this looks really good here, that looks really good there. So clearly, obviously, I did that because of this. It's a lot messier. I found early on, because I came from this sort of academic background, I took the uber male approach and thought that the market was a problem to be solved. And once I'd solved the problem, everything would be all right. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way, because it's not an external problem. It's an internal problem. And this is undoubtedly something you found with people you coach and mentor, is that their businesses are often not external problems, they're internal problems that they brought. As you say, they're not prepared, they're overconfident, they're cocky, they just want to do it, whatever it might be. And often a lot of the time they haven't even defined what it is. And so I think in part I had to rein that bit back in and to realise that the external bits of markets are quite easy to solve. And this will undoubtedly annoy a lot of people who have, degrees in quantitative finance. But building a trading system is very, very simple. Building a profitable trading system is very, very simple. Making it work is very, very hard, because there is this disconnect between what the system does and what the operator is capable of doing.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, humans run their lives as a series of emotional events. We're not cold, hard, logical individuals. And this is why in trading and in all manner of business, most of the serious high-level coaching is not on the foundational material, it's on the individual. And because if you can get that right, then all the rest just falls into place. And people like me, we have problems with engineers, mathematicians, physicists, because they're very stark. And I ran into one of our previous mentorees, good Lord, it'd be probably nearly 12 years ago at the opera. He was a mathematician by training. And I said, how's the trading going? And he said, I'm almost about to place my first trade. He'd done our program nearly 9 years earlier. And to this day, I don't think he's still placed a trade. And he can't, because his professional background is one of being correct. Now, unfortunately, trading, like business, is a messy, dirty affair.
Yeah.
It's like a fight in a phone box. It's not what people think it is. And business is never what people think it is. And he, unfortunately, because of his personality type, his professional background, all that integrated together, he can't make a decision.
It's procrastination, isn't it? It's at its worst.
It's professional procrastination. His profession has taught him to see the world through a single lens, and that's the lens of always being correct. And look, I can understand that. If you're an engineer, if you're a civil engineer and you build bridges, if you get the decimal point in the wrong spot, you might actually get a lot of people hurt.
Yeah.
So I can see that the need for that order and precision there. But some people can't let that go as a personality type. And they can't understand that business is this sort of very rambunctious, rolling sort of affair that just rolls along.
I think it's so interesting what you say, because a mentor of mine that I worked with for a long time said that engineers, scientists, doctors actually make very good traders, investors, business owners if they get over the premise of they have to be 100% right. And he always said, if you get 80% right, that's good enough. Make the choice and move on. Have you found that with your experience, that the engineers are very good once they get over that little hurdle?
Once they get over themselves, then they become very proficient. The sort of professional class that really struggles, really struggles, are medicos, because they have a halo effect.
What's medicos?
Doctors.
Okay, right.
They have this halo effect whereby they're highly intelligent, they're very highly trained, they therefore think, they bring with them an ego that thinks that they can do any and everything very, very well. Unfortunately, they run right bang smack into markets who really don't care what your academic background is. Markets are equal opportunity employers. They don't care if you've got a degree in business, quantitative finance, engineering. They don't care if you went to the Wharton School of Business. They don't care if you're male, female, young, old. What they will discriminate on, though, is this notion of your own ego. And it's the old saying, pride goeth before a fall. And we always find that doctors struggle with this. They struggle to let go of the fact that, yes, they know a great deal about this, and they've been selected for that because of certain criteria. They know nothing about this. And that chasm causes them all sorts of problems.
Thank you. I think you're absolutely right in business. If they can get over themselves, they can be very, very successful, but some of them can't. Okay, Louise, tell me about your bliss zone, which is when passion meets skill and money. I think this is a really interesting, fascinating area that you're talking about here.
Yeah, look, I do think that there are lots of people that talk about passion these days, Mark. They're saying if you've got a kid who's going to uni, get them to work in the area that they love. I'm sure we would have heard that advice. The thing is, the area that you love isn't going to necessarily pay the bills, and it may not even be your skill set. So if you can have somebody that has an area that they love and they have skill, but there is no money, then you really have a hobby. You know, I do clay. I love it and I'm okay at it, but it doesn't pay me any money. And what about if you've got skill and it pays you good money, but you have no passion? Well, heck, that sounds like a lot of people's jobs, doesn't it? Where they don't really love it. They're going through that zombie mode, that drone-like existence. And if you've got like passion and you've got money, but you have no skill, then that may be describing your manager. So the idea is to combine all three: something that you love, something that you have skill in, and something that earns you money. And that to me is bliss. Now that is something that is a higher level of thinking. It's certainly something that doesn't come naturally to most people, and it can take a lifetime to pursue. All of those steps along the way, as Chris said, it just seems like, hey, everything led me to this moment. While you're going through those steps, you don't realise it's leading to something greater. So a lot of what we're talking about here is finding within you the ability to be resilient, because if you've got something that will mean that it's likely you'll persist, then mastery will follow from there. If you cut out too soon, and certainly so many people quit trading too soon, far, far too soon, then you really won't achieve greatness and you won't achieve that bliss zone. It's something that is called flow as well, that flow that people can get into where time seems to take on a different dimension, and you're so involved doing what you're doing that it means nothing to you to have interruptions, to have mosquitoes, to have zappy little things trying to distract you. You don't chase any other shiny object because you're in your zone. So that's what I think is really what most people are chasing, that calling, rather than that autonotrone where they're just doing the same thing again and again. They're just getting up out of bed and it's so boring. That zone that we're all seeking, it's within your reach and you can get there. And a lot of people, as you know, Mark, are getting it in their own business, and trading is a business. It's the quintessential small business.
It's interesting because it's the whole quote of I'm an overnight success, but it took me 10 years to get there. And Chris, maybe you can pick up on this. Just I think so many people think, and you talked to Louise about persistence and turning up and being present and doing what you need to do every day. What's your views on this sort of overnight success that some people think they deserve?
There is that wonderful sense of entitlement to some people. I saw this survey, and it would have been 2 or 3 years ago. And what had happened was this group had polled high school students in the US, the UK, and China, and said, what effectively the question that everyone is eventually faced with: what do you want to be when you grow up? 50% of the high school students from the US and the UK said, I wish to be a YouTuber. They then followed up on that and they said, why? To be famous. Okay, famous for what? Anything? Contrast that with the response from the Chinese. 50% of Chinese high school students said that they wanted to be an astronaut when they grew up. And unfortunately, I think there has been this cultural shift that we've experienced whereby there is a sense of entitlement in people, and there is this notion that you should be famous for anything. Hence the growth in reality TV shows that people are willing to go on and make complete and utter knobs of themselves on. Hence the rise of the influencer. This thing that you don't really have to build anything, you don't really have to do anything. But fame is something that is just granted to you as if it's bestowed from on high because you've done something stupid on YouTube, or you take 4,500 photographs of yourself in a day as a young woman. And so it's that very much this notion that I'm not certain people want to build things anymore, which is, I actually think, a double-edged sword. For those of us who do like to build things, and for younger people coming through who like to build things, it means the ground is open. The problem is you've got to cut through the noise of everybody else who's making so much noise doing nothing.
Yep.
And everyone in business, I think, finds this, is that cutting through the noise is immensely difficult and very, very hard. And it takes a very clear message. It takes a very clear strategic approach. It takes a very sort of, to double up on it, a unique USP. You've got to have something that others want, but you've also got to deliver it in a manner that is respectful and observant of them. And you're not doing it for your own sort of aggrandizing sort of theme of world domination.
In this whole point of fame that people are kind of like, so I'm 41 and I remember as a 16-year-old reality television coming up and everyone talking about this grand experiment. The more intellectuals were talking about this grand experiment that so reality TV was going to give us. But all it really gave us was people wanting to be famous for nothing, for sitting in a house, for Big Brother, sitting in a house for 24 hours, and you become famous for that. It's a real challenge, this whole idea of fame for this generation, that they want to be famous just for doing nothing.
No, I think the dispiriting thing about that for young people is it takes away from the young people who are actually doing things, who are attempting to make a difference in the world. They've got even more noise to cut through.
So, Louise, why don't you tell me about your system? Because I'm actually it's fascinating to understand behind Trading Game, there's actually a system that is looking at markets and understanding the markets. Why don't you just go a little bit of detail about what that system does on the back end?
Sure. So with trading systems, this is where we really need to be scientific about our method and approach trading as a business person. So you have to look at your entry, your exit, and your position sizing when it comes to trading. They're the three key areas. And if you miss one of those, or if you're a little bit off on one of those, you won't make money. The other aspects, the system is part of it, but also your own trading psychology is so important. We've seen people with brilliant systems be unable to trade them because of ego or fear. So your own trading psychology is essential. And then the third component is maintenance. So that's where once you've got some results coming in, it's checking those results with a mentor, making sure you're staying on the right track, that there's nothing there that is blindsiding you. You know, the difficulty is that you're very unaware of how to approach your own problems because you're sitting inside that jam jar. You know, you can't read the label while you're inside that jam jar. You need somebody from outside to tell you what the difficulties are and what the ingredients are. We see traders day in and day out where they have no idea there's just one little thing that they need to correct before they go on to greatness. And for us, for Chris and I, the overwhelming feeling of satisfaction is seeing somebody come to that realization, and for us to be that conduit, for us to have given them that impetus to move forward and to alter just a tiny little detail. You know, that is just thrilling. In all the years I've been doing this, I've never lost that spark of excitement when I can see somebody turn their results around and what that can do for their life. It's just divine.
It's amazing. Yes. It's interesting that you say, Chris said earlier on, that actually trading is not particularly hard, but it's what has to be done and turning it up every day, being persistent, delivering every single day is actually the hard part. So would you say that mindset and sort of people's how they approach it is probably more important than the foundation works, Louise?
Yes, and probably also the reason why are they trading. We've got a gentleman in New Zealand that we've trained. He's a third of his money goes to his philanthropic charitable donations, and that has been amazing. We've trained another person who works, currently things are a little bit different here, aren't they? But works in Africa for 6 months of the year, helping people in needy situations, and then comes back to Australia for 6 months to be able to earn enough money to be able to fund that lifestyle. Now, I think it's incredibly creative the way people live their lives, as long as they have enough money to be able to fund that why. You know, it's a little catch-22, isn't it? You need a big enough why to get you involved, but not so big that it's immense and you can't see that is possible. So if you're the type of person that is thinking, I don't want to plan too far ahead because it seems too scary or I might not be able to cope with it, then that's okay too. Just shine that light and go as far as the spotlight shines. You don't have to go to the moon with this. You can just earn an extra $500 a week if that's all you can see, and that is possible for you. Down the track, once you're earning that and it's consistent, then you can broaden out and you can do bigger things with it.
Interesting. Chris, both of you are prolific on writing books as well. So it's something that I struggle with, the thought of writing a book, and still have not committed to that. So just tell me a little bit about maybe your latest book, Chris, and maybe a little bit about your writing style. How do you approach writing a new book?
I think that there's one or two misunderstandings that people have about writing as a process. I'm very much of the school of, some people aren't familiar with them, they're books by Jack London, the sort of White Wolf series set in the northern United States, Canada. And he was a very prolific author. And somebody wrote to him one day and said, look, I need a muse, I need something to inspire me. And he simply said, listen, sport, don't be a dickhead, sit in front of the typewriter and type. Anything else? No, type. And there is this belief that inspiration strikes you at 3 a.m. and you write for 7 days and it's all done. My process is, it starts with sort of scribbling in a notebook, a series of lines going all over the place. And then I gradually just backfill those bits and pieces. And there is a thing in writing that I truly believe in that says that if you are not utterly and completely sick of the sight of your book by the time you've finished, you've probably rushed it. Because the worst moment in an author's life is when it comes back from the damned editor and it's got, it should have a question mark here and a comma here and what's that picture? And you're thinking, I don't care. I've been staring at this friggin' thing for a year. It's yours now. Look after it. And in turn, the process is like everything else. If I can throw it back to trading for a moment, success is a grind. It's not winning the lottery. People think that you start a business, you begin trading, you do something or other, you do that for a week and all of a sudden you've got 50 million in the bank. No, you've probably got less in the bank at the end of the week than you had at the beginning, because that's just the way the world works. Everything is a grind. Business is a grind. Writing is a grind. Anything you want to do that is difficult is a grind. It just is. And I think one of the things that people miss when they come into business or they attempt any endeavour, they simply don't accept that as a thing. They don't accept that anything that is worth doing will eventually wear you down a little bit. It'll grind on you. Mm. You undoubtedly have these conversations with people that you mentor where they pick up the phone and they go, Mark, that's it. You can stick it. I've had enough. And then they calm down from that and they get over it and get on with it. But everything's a grind. Writing's a grind. Trading's a grind. Keeping fit's a grind. You know, making certain your relationships don't fall down around your ear is a grind. You know, not shooting and burying your children in the backyard is a grind.
No, I do agree. I do. Well, maybe not about the kids thing, but I do agree that the anything that's worth doing is worth doing, and to struggle with and to actually to achieve it is the aim. This is what I've been suggested writing a book a couple of times, and I just have this. It's not a mental block. It's just because I've read Tim Ferriss is one of my favourite podcasters and writers, and he says just sit down and write. And it's very similar to what you said, Chris. He said sit down and write. Day one, like write for half an hour. It might be rubbish, but just write. And then tomorrow, do another half hour. Again, it might be rubbish, but just write. And then you'll get a sort of flow that you'll find your time to be able to write. And the other thing he said, which is interesting, what you said, Chris, is the editorial stage is probably the most important one, whether it's you self-editing yourself to fit it all together, or whether you are a little bit further down the line and the editor's coming in to correct it. Do you think that's the best stage, the stage where you get your $1 million idea as a book?
I think, and just to sort of track back to the notion of writing for a little bit, the other thing I've known people to do is get a dictaphone.
Right.
Or what's the software, Dragon, which is dictation software.
Mm.
And they will simply talk into that and just let it go as a free flow. They'll get somebody to it will transcribe itself. You can then go through and pick bits out, because a lot of people are much better when they get on a train of thought that they can express verbally, because it doesn't have the interrupter gear. When you type something, you've actually got to stop the thought process and switch it from this notion of a series of ideas into your head to a physical action of typing. And not everybody can touch type, so that's not an unconscious competency. Whereas with talking, people can just blast, and it removes that single impediment.
And the other thing that I think I'm just going to go and perhaps look into your subconscious here, Mark. You're thinking of this as a massive type of impediment here, that it's all got to be done in one and it's huge. You're very verbal, you're beautifully expressing yourself, and I think that Chris is onto something here. You could dictate it and then you've got a whole new world open to you, but potentially the main thing you'd need to do is come up with the big idea first, break it down into 12 sections and write 12 articles.
Right.
So if I can give you perhaps a ready-made idea that's popped into my mind for your first book, I think it should be Podcast Your Way to Success. Okay. And then you break that into 12 chapters, and on your blog or even on somebody else's blog, if you've got somebody who's going to assist you with this, is write an article per month. And in 12 months' time, you've got your entire book. If you do your 12 each week, in 3 months' time, you've got your book written.
That's true.
So break it down into small chunks. And I think in a lot of ways it can seem very daunting to write a book. But once you're on a roll, the book writes itself. There's a magic with writing, and you have to allow that to flow through you rather than having to sort of think of it as such a big, scary process. If you break it down, I think that could really help.
That's very true.
The other thing I would suggest is that looking through your previous podcasts, you've got an enormous back catalogue and library of stories and ideas that are just sitting there, which are already pre-formatted, they're already done as a Q&A, and it can be a matter of simply taking out, the 12 things I learned from interviewing industry's best.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then everybody you've had on the show, if you quote them, then they're likely to promote you. So you've got a ready-made group of people. We would promote you. We love your work. So have a think about your contacts, because clearly you're brilliant at networking and bringing people together. So use your strengths for that to promote your book. And I think you've got a ready-made $1 million idea.
Thank you. Thank you very much, guys. I got a blushing now.
And Louise, little things. They're just little things. People have this notion of, the analogy I always use is that when Bill Gates started Microsoft, he did not imagine the behemoth it had become. He started a business in his parents' garage deep time ago, with the aim of just tinkering with computers. If you start with the idea of creating this massive behemoth, I don't think anyone would get started. Although, granted, I think there are people out there who go, well, I started with the idea of ruling the world. No, you didn't. You've just readjusted your narrative to account for the luck and happenstance that's come your way. Because for every Facebook, there is MySpace.
Yeah.
And so we have to be careful about that. But if you start small, then small builds momentum. And I think people forget that. Everybody all of a sudden, I've known people who want to open a restaurant. Okay, that's a good idea. Can't imagine why. It looks like really hard work. and they go, right, I'm going to open one and then I'm going to open 15. How about you get the one right first?
Yeah.
It's these small projects. And I think, again, we come back to blokes. Testosterone makes you stupid. You've got to start small and just let it be organic and grow of its own accord.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you guys for the pep talk. It's really helpful. No, seriously, it's been very helpful. I appreciate that. Louise, how has the market changed, or how is the market changing in this post-pandemic world?
Yeah, look, I know people are going to want me to say here that things are totally different, but really the market is the market. I've seen so many peaks and so many valleys over the last 30 years or so that really there's no differences. You still need to have a good way to enter the market. You need to know when to get out. You need to know how much money to put in. So sure, things are a little bit jagged, with that whole drop where it really did look like, hey, everybody's going to lose everything they've ever made in the markets. But these things find a level. They hit support eventually. Things have been going up and up. I mean, if you have a look at the charts, your country, our country, in America, really things are looking beautifully bright. And it's also because the markets are not the economy. The two are completely separate concepts. So I don't think you can actually have that economic view and apply it directly to the markets and make money out of it. You have to actually look at the charts themselves, see what people are doing with their money, who's putting their money where their mouth is. If you can read large groups of people, you can work out ways to make money out of their actions.
And just to probably sort of top and tail that, I did an exercise a little while ago where I took the share price of the East India Company from 1720 to 1721. Right. And I overlaid that over Bitcoin. They were identical.
Really?
So the world doesn't change because people don't change. People as a group don't change. Individuals change. Technology around us changes. But by and large, people as populations really struggle to change within the span of our lives. Granted, we now have a thing called human rights that we didn't have at the time of the East India Company. So there has been that longitudinal change. That's a change that was 300 years in the making. In our lifetime, there'll probably be no observable changes in the way people behave.
Barring sort of the internet and the technology.
They're just technological changes. And I would rank the internet as of lesser importance compared to indoor plumbing. The joy of not having to go outside at 3 a.m. for a pee is really high in this household.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Don't really know where to go with that. Chris, why don't you answer me the question of where are you planning to be, you and Louise planning to be in 2 to 5 years' time?
Probably doing exactly the same thing. Okay. Simply because I can't perceive of a need to change or to alter anything. I think we've reached that very enviable position where we have an equilibrium in where we think the business should go, our relationship to one another, our values. So the business just keeps on doing its thing. Mm-hmm. And whenever we come up with new projects, as we say, they always start small and we let them form a life of their own. So we go through the process of the pre-mortem and then we go through a series of launch stages. And the launch stages are always incremental and always small. But when we started Talking Trading, our podcast, we sat down with the people involved and we sat around a table over dinner and we said, it's a year from now, it's all gone horribly wrong. Why? And we looked at all the problems, technology problems, problem getting penetration into the marketplace, all of those pre-mortem things. And we set about an incremental launch. So it built very slowly from that. We understood all the things that could go wrong. And then it's that release to marketplace. But it's not, we actually don't find blast marketplace work. We like proof of concept.
Yeah.
because proof of concept you can do very cheaply.
Yeah.
And we like things that have
to put everything
longevity as well. So the mentor program, the 22-year type of longevity. Talking Trading, I think we were quite early on in the podcast game that's been going, I think, 8 years now. We've got graduate programs as well. They tack on to the end of the mentor program. So a lot of it is aligned not only with our values, but the core values of the business, to be able to assist people getting to where they want to get. We take our eyes off ourselves and put them onto other people and help them achieve their goals. And coincidentally, we achieve our goals at the same time.
I totally agree. The whole idea of even a side hustle, something you just want to trial, like a podcast or something like that. If you think of it as a long-term strategy, you think about getting better 1% every day, those small incremental changes, look at strategic where you're going to go. Chris, you said about testing the market. I think this is essentially my coaching model for startups you've just described there. And I think it really is. And what I've learned today is, invest in business is all the same. It's all the same theory. It's slightly tweaked for what market you're in, what industry you're in. So yeah, I think I've learned a lot from you guys that validation in the market is so important.
There was a very, very interesting piece I came across on YouTube a few weeks ago that I fired through to Louise, and it was a young fellow who'd gone to business school, graduate school. And he was constantly looking for an idea that he could generate as a startup. He didn't care what the idea was. There were a few things that struck me. One, he understood intuitively that he actually needed to get a job and understand how business worked, which he did. But he tried, what was it, Louise, 3 or 4 startups that were all different, and all bar one failed except the one at the end. And the one at the end was selling ugly fruit and vegetable. And he was driving through, I can't remember where in the US, and he stopped at a farm and they were literally selling fruit that looked ugly for half price. And it struck him, he thought, if I can get the delivery, the logistics working, I can make this work. And that was so far removed from his first idea as to be not recognisable. But the single central point was him and his desire to find something that he could bring to market that the market wanted. Mm-hmm. And so it's very much that you've got to know what the market wants. You've got to bring something to the market that they want, that they will need. Mm-hmm. People have all sorts of brilliant ideas, and you look at it and go, fabulous idea, I've got no idea what to do with it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. I actually think the person behind the business is more important than the idea, because you can have a very average business idea with a great practitioner or a great operation person, and they can create a magic business just from a very average idea. That happens all the time. So I think that's and I equally like, and I think, Chris, you said earlier on about investing and trading, is the market doesn't lie. And I think that's why I like business as well, creating my own businesses, because if it doesn't work, you won't make money, and that's it.
So pure, isn't it?
Yeah. You soon find out it's not like a job where they might take 2 or 3 years to engineer you out of a position if you're not very good. In business, you soon find out if you're rubbish.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys, we're coming to the end of the podcast. I asked the same 6 questions to all of my guests. They're quick-fire questions. They don't need quick-fire answer. We're going to just focus in on Louise for these 6 questions today. Louise, what's the best decision that you made?
I think to quit my job and be a full-time trader. So that was way back in 1996. My goodness.
I thought you were going to start meeting me.
I think sometimes we consider especially if we've got qualifications, like I've got 2 degrees. I was working for a company that was a multinational at a national manager level. To be able to walk away from that, it felt like I was betraying everything that I'd worked up to date to be able to achieve. But my future self actually has thanked me for doing what I did. So knowing when it's time to quit and when the music has stopped.
Absolutely. What's the best piece of advice you've been given?
This is from my grandmother. She said to me, "She who makes the gold makes the rules."
Oh.
So that to me has been a guiding principle. So firstly, when you're looking at, do you want to be in a submissive position or do you want to be the one in control? That quote tells me, be the one in control. Look at making something. So having a creative endeavour that ends up creating something. So for Chris and I mean, Chris is my best friend. I mean, we're not married, by the way. We both have separate spouses. Is to build something with Chris has been one of the greatest rewards of my life. To make the gold in our business together has just been a wonderful way to be able to explore so many aspects of both of our personalities. So making those rules and making the gold, I think is, pretty high up there for me, Mark.
That's amazing. Who's helped you most in your career?
When I had that job as a national manager, I was employed by a gentleman, Treve Jenkin, English gentleman actually, living in Bristol. He's a gorgeous man. He really helped open doors for me. He told me when I was being a bit of a fool, and he gave me that tough love that you need to be able to get ahead in your career. But since becoming a trader and being involved with Chris, I'd say, Chris, you've helped me the most. You tend to bring me down to earth. I'm a 500 ideas a minute person, and Chris has got the ability to say no 497 times. So we will distill between the two of us the top 3 ideas. Yes, usually they are my idea, but it's only because I've thrown so many at him that he's been able to discern.
That's amazing. And again, it's having good business people that you work with, these business partners, is so important to complement each other.
Yeah, and to have the trust, like if one of us feels very strongly about an idea, then of course the other person will back it. But why put your energy into such a spreading thin type of situation? It's far better to focus and have that absolute determination to achieve a specific goal, and that goal makes sense on every level.
Absolutely. Do you have any regrets?
I regret investing, I'll put that term loosely, with a friend of mine. I'd known him for 11 years. He spun a good story, and I convinced Chris Tate to invest as well. We put $500,000 into this person's business, and he went over to the Ukraine and spent it on prostitutes.
Oh, no.
So that was a regret. I was in awe that Chris didn't stab me for it, because it was my friend and it was my idea, again, the ideas thing. But we did make the decision jointly, there's no doubt. And it was a situation that if you do the best you can with the resources you have available to you, it can't be too much of a life regret. But I do regret, I missed that friendship with him. I mean, as ridiculous as that sounds, he took $500,000 from us, but he was a very, very close friend. So I think potentially, if I had my time over again, I would do that pre-mortem before that particular event. That is the thing that I learned, and that's where the pre-mortem concept came from.
It's so interesting. I was talking to my father-in-law, who's a successful entrepreneur and investor, and I was talking about a situation. And I'm sorry, guys, if you're listening and you're offended to this. He said, "There's arseholes everywhere," and he said, "There just is. Like you'll meet them, you won't meet them. Like there just comes a time where you will meet someone who just is a wrong un. They're making money and doing it in the wrong way."
Not everybody's an asshole, but they seem to be equally dispersed so that you do meet one every day.
Yes.
Unfortunately, these days you're just not allowed to taser them.
Thanks, Chris. I'll keep that in mind. I'm going to go on Amazon and get myself a taser. Louise, what are you most proud of?
I am most proud of overcoming the health issues that Chris and I have overcome to be able to trade and to help the people who we've helped. So one of the reasons why Chris and I bonded is because both of us have had significant health problems and we are very persistent in overcoming them. So that, I think, takes a certain sort of person, and I definitely appreciate that grit and resilience in Chris. You know, he's had several times where Chris and I have said goodbye because we thought he would die. Oh. So watching that man and how strong he can stand and how much he can dig in has been exceptional.
Oh, well.
My father would say I'm like a bad penny. Just keep coming back.
Well, yeah, I think health for friends and family is so important, and that's one of the things that really motivates me is health and maintaining health and being successful to be able to be the longevity for your kids and your family members and things like that is so important to me. And so yeah, thank you for that. What does legacy mean to you?
I never quite know how to answer this, because even if you look at really famous people in history, a lot of them we don't even know their surnames. You know, Alexander the Great, who in the hell was Alexander the Great? Surely his surname wasn't the Great. So I think people overestimate the role of legacy. I would prefer to see a values legacy. So the values that I'd like to transmit to my clients, to my friends, to my children: love, nurturing, and inspiration. They're my top 3 values. So to be able to impart those and to be able to do it in a kind way that honours who they are and cherishes their light, that's what I want my legacy to be. I know William Hurst, for example, you know, he left an amazing legacy. He's got an incredible castle there in California. I don't really have that in mind for myself. The majority of people 2 generations down the track, they've spent any money that was there. I would much rather leave a values-based kindness as my legacy.
So important. So important. Thank you. And where can people find you if they want to reach out to you guys?
Well, come to tradinggame.com.au. We'd love to see you there. You can register your details. I will send you my free trading plan template. And for those who are interested in trading, I've got that trading course that you'll get as well. It's an audio course. It's called Trading Made Simple. And of course, you can come and visit us on our podcast. So we love podcasts. Our podcast is talkingtrading.com.au. So tradinggame.com.au and talkingtrading.com.au.
Thank you, Louise. Thank you, Chris. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you.
We've loved chatting with you, Mark. So much fun.
Good. Cheers.